Of all animals, it seems like serpents make an appearance in ancient mythological stories more often than any other. They play a prominent role in many creation stories throughout the world. Snakes have many qualities that make them stand out from other animals, which allows them to represent unique and powerful symbols. While examining the possible meanings for the use of serpents as symbols, new insight will be added to existing ideas to create a fresh look at some ancient concepts. Cosmogonical stories from around the world have common patterns and ideas that often involve serpents and other images that represent the fundamental forces in nature. The mythological descriptions and relationships of these images show a very creative way to describe the same forces that lay at the roots of modern scientific models. By assessing the basic qualities of serpents and their most iconic symbol, the Ouroboros, a body of evidence has developed to show that serpents in ancient mythological stories are the personification of the force known today as electromagnetism. Since most ancient mythologies were communicated by word of mouth for immense periods of time before being written down, many of the symbols used in the stories developed from basic ways of drawing two-dimensional images. Explained well by researcher Dana Michael Reemes. The symbol of the serpent as protective barrier evolved in the context of writing and drawing on a two-dimensional surface, upon which a two-dimensional ring could be understood as representing a three-dimensional encapsulation. This is why the serpent is also described as one who is at the boundary of the earth, that is, who surrounds the earth, where this encapsulating limit is in contact with the circumference of the terrestrial plane. Lack of consideration for this simplification of three-dimensional objects into two-dimensional images, while attempting to interpret archaic symbols and imagery, can very often lead to erroneous conclusions and meanings. The most notable quality about snakes is how they sliver. They move their bodies in an undulating or oscillatory motion to get from one place to another. Oscillatory motion consists of a cyclical balance or restoration of force, creating a wave-like pattern. When attempting to create an image of a snake, the easiest way is to draw it as a single wavy line. The same basic waveform that is used to describe electromagnetism. For some reason, this quality is often overlooked when interpreting serpents as a symbol, but it is the main thing that distinguishes them from other animals. There is a brief mention of this aspect of snake symbolism in a description of a Hopi harvest ritual. The snake, with its zigzag movements, symbolizes lightning and its accompanying rain. This reference acknowledges the oscillatory motion of the snake and also connects it to electrical activity. The most basic image of a snake conveys a sense of wave-like motion and is the reason they are remarkably different than any other animal. The slithery nature of snakes lends itself to another basic image of a coil or ring. Since snakes move in a wave-like fashion, their bodies are long and very flexible, which gives them the ability to coil their bodies around in a circle. The simplest way to portray this is with a snake in the form of a circle with its mouth at its tail. This circle, or coil, quality is also found in descriptions of magnetism. Magnetic fields consist of imaginary field lines that are pictured as closed loops or coils that travel through and unite both the north and south poles of a magnet. The serpent appears regularly in one of its oldest and most iconic symbols known as the Ouroboros. Ouroboros is a Greek term that means tail devourer. It is usually depicted as a serpent or dragon in the shape of a coil, with its mouth biting its own tail to form a complete circle. The meaning of Ouroboros has evolved over time and through various cultures. It is often thought to represent protection and stability. It expresses the unification of two opposing forces. The head and the tail unite to form one complete concept. The idea of the serpent biting its tail is also understood to represent continuity of time and cyclic pattern, the beginning and the ending united in a closed rotating loop, suggesting eternity. However, some of the most profound aspects of this powerful symbol are mostly overlooked. The first appearance of the snake, coiled around in the form of a ring, occurs in Egypt, and, although often misinterpreted and misunderstood, the Ouroboros originally represented a force that acted as an enveloping shield. Reemes explains it well when she says, "A detailed reassessment of relevant primary sources shows that the icon is primarily associated with the idea of protective enclosure, conceived of as a divine force functioning on multiple levels: cosmic, character, solar, funereal, and individual. So, in other words, the Ouroboros was initially used as a symbol for a force that created a field of protection that functions at multiple levels. This is precisely what electromagnetic forces do. Electromagnetism has a serpent-like motion that operates on many levels, and through its own interactions, or self-sustaining nature, it creates different levels of fields that act as protective enclosures. It is hard to imagine a more suitable image, as simple as the Ouroboros, that can capture the proprieties of electromagnetic force so well. Another notable feature of the first appearance of Ouroboros is that the snake biting its own tail is represented as a wavy line in the form of a circle, while most images of the Ouroboros are represented as a simple circle. There are many images in ancient myths that are often associated with that of the serpent: water, trees, pillars, poles, an axis or center, all of which have inherent properties that relate to the modern concepts of electromagnetic forces. The scope of this paper will focus only on the serpent and its association with water. Suffice it to say, all of the aforementioned symbols carry a sense of support, and in that way, along with many others, relate to the original meaning of protection and support of the serpent and electromagnetism. Each image highlights a different aspect of a concept or idea related to the force. It might be argued that one force cannot be represented in so many different ways. The idea of electromagnetism covers a wide array of different concepts, such as electric force, electric fields, magnetic radiation, electromagnetic spectrum, etc. It is no different than one woman being represented as a daughter, a mother, an aunt, a niece, a student, a vegan, etc. Symbols often overlap while expressing characteristics of different relationships that they are meant to represent. The different images used as personifications in mythological stories can relate to unique aspects of the electromagnetic force and different interactions that result from the relationships that are formed. In ancient mythology, snakes are often connected to water. By understanding the transition of three-dimensional concepts to basic flat images, an immediate and simple connection explains why the serpent is regularly associated with water and primordial oceans. Both snakes in water are expressed as a simple wavy line. Furthermore, this wavy line is not static. Snakes and waterways are always moving, which allows the symbol to convey a sense of oscillatory motion, in the same manner that a two-dimensional image implies three-dimensional concepts. Certain static images provide a sense of movement. Some stories even go as far as saying the ocean surrounding the world is the same thing as the world's serpent. Currents, streams, flows, springs, ripples, and fountains are all terms that can be associated with water, but also can be used to describe charged particles and electromagnetic forces. Since water and serpents can be expressed with the same basic wavy line that has an implication of motion, and because some stories even equate the serpent with water, the possibility exists for water to also be a personification of some aspect electromagnetism, or a related wave-like force. Serpents in mythological stories are often the personification of natural forces, and by examining the image of the Ouroboros, it will be easy to see how this simple and beautiful representation reflects the nature of electromagnetism. The head and the tail of the serpent biting its own tail can be viewed as two opposing forces uniting in an eternal balance, elegantly capturing the essence of many creation stories from around the world. Once thought to be two different forces, electricity and magnetism are now considered one force called electromagnetism. Electricity can be expressed as wavy lines, while magnetism can be represented as imaginary lines of force that form closed loops or coils. Both electricity and magnetism have the same basic traits as the image of a snake with its waves and coils. When an electrical field changes, it produces a magnetic field, and a changing magnetic field, in turn, creates an electric field. One generates the other. In this manner, the forces depend on each other to sustain themselves, but technically, they are one force, so it is one self-sustaining system. Without having the image of the Ouroboros in mind, physicist P.C.W. Davies expresses the symbol perfectly when he states that electric and magnetic fields can feed off each other, each acting as a source of the other, without the need for electric charges or currents to sustain them. Describing the electromagnetic force as a wave motion that is self-sustaining and feeds off itself is completely and beautifully encapsulated in the symbol of the snake biting its own tail.